What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to break down what happened during Investor Day, whether or not this is actually going to help Tesla in any way, shape, or form, and whether or not this will actually lead to Tesla seeing a big crash tomorrow. Now, before I break anything down about this information, before I talk about what's going on with Tesla's share price in the markets, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 7 free stocks plus free level 2 data. And this offer ends in just 4 weeks. So make sure you check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So guys, I'm actually a little bit frustrated after what I just witnessed from Tesla. I'm recording this video very late because I was actually listening to the entire Investor Day call, hoping that Tesla would say at least something for the hype that was actually like out there in expectation of the event. And ultimately, Tesla did not even come close to expectations. They ended up not announcing a new model. They did actually confirm that they're planning on it basically releasing one in the future, but there was no model that was actually released. And essentially, everything they talked about was either already known in the past or they just kind of elaborated on more things. So the real question is, what's going to happen to Tesla? What am I going to say about this? Now, the event started like a little bit after the market ended up closing. And the event went on for like over 4 hours. It was very, very tiring, to be honest with everyone. And yeah, that's why I'm recording this video very late. But I'm just going to briefly go over some of the main points. There wasn't anything too crazy that was announced, guys. It's not living up to the hype whatsoever. I even heard from other sources that Elon Musk was not prepared for his presentation, and there was not a whole lot of preparation for it. They just basically talked about the current product lines of Tesla, the future plans for expansion, how good their systems and their development has been. And in my opinion, the event was amazing for Tesla's long term, for long term investors. Amazing, amazing stuff. For the short term investors that want to see a big pump after this, well, it's not necessarily going to be good for you. To start us off, the biggest thing I think that was like catching a lot of people's eyes was Elon Musk did technically hint at 2 future Tesla vehicles during the event. However, he did not say anything about them specifically. They just had a picture. They basically showed 2 extra cars in the catalog, and they were actually covered by a sheet. I'm going to show you that in a couple of minutes. But then when Elon Musk was asked about this, the guy said he doesn't want to say too much about it. There's not really like a whole lot to say, and he just kind of like wanted to ask for the next questions after that. So he didn't give us any details about this, and this was kind of unfortunate because there was so much hype from the media about how Tesla's going to expand like crazy, how they need to have these like $25,000 to $30,000 EVs. Elon Musk was like, oh, yeah, but we have to figure out how we're going to actually do that. So they're still working on that. They don't actually have the car out yet. That costs like $25,000. And like I said before, I was mentioning on this channel many times, there's a saying, buy the rumors, sell the news. So when there's so much hype for big events like this, there was a chance Tesla could have announced something like this, something like, 2 new models or something like that. And that could have caused Tesla to explode in share price, right? It was a possibility. But I mentioned to everyone as well, when expectations are super high, Tesla's not guaranteed to meet all those expectations. And that is why Tesla's selling off as hard as it is right now. I'm going to talk more about that in just a couple of minutes. Once again, we had Elon Musk's master plan. Definitely, it was a good plan. I do believe that there were a lot of great things that came out of this, once again, for long term Tesla investors. I'm going to break down some of the main points that were made. I'm going to try to make this very quick, though, and very brief. I'm not going to go into like meticulous details like a lot of the engineers there. And once again, I respect them. I understand that. But in my opinion, okay, I'm going to be honest. I don't think that that's the way Tesla should be presenting events like this. Because if you're hyping people up for an investor day, your audience is going to be the general public and big investors and etc. So, I mean, making a 4-hour event where the entire time you have engineers going on and on and on about details about the products, I mean, it's all right, but it's not the best way to market your company, just in my opinion. I think it would have been a lot more efficient for them to make the event shorter, a lot more better planned, and things like that. But anyways, I'm not going to just complain about the event. It is what it is. I do appreciate Tesla and Elon Musk for everything they've done. But let's talk about some of the big things that came out. So, how is the master plan going to come out for sustainable energy? Basically, they're going to be working very hard at accelerating Earth's development in sustainable energy. And in doing so, they're going to be developing new investments into solar, wind, and other mechanisms. And they actually talked about being a lot more efficient when doing that. So, for example, in parts of Texas, it's very windy at night. So, you could implement like wind turbines, which will be powered at night. Then you have solar in the daytime, and a lot of things like that. They also mentioned the fact that Tesla's going to develop more products. They did actually hint at a possible, Tesla plane or boat to come out in the future. Once again, super cool. On top of that, they have a big plan to eliminate the use of fossil fuels. Once again, it's not going to happen instantly. And Elon Musk did mention that people are very pessimistic when it comes to talks like this, but he believes that there is a sustainable and pragmatic path for Americans and the entire world to actually transition into renewable energy. Right, that's part of Tesla's vision. So it was good that they went over this in the beginning. Then they're talking about the second part, which is switching to electric vehicles because they do help big time going into like the longer term. I know that when it comes to building a Tesla, there's going to be a lot of mining, a lot of chemicals that are going to be released into air during production, etc. But Tesla is still working on that. I know Elon Musk has addressed that many times, and transitioning, into the EV sector is going to help the world in a way where you're not going to be burning fossil fuels. And over a long period of time of driving these Teslas, they have very long-term batteries. And what's good about them is many of them are expected to last lifetimes. And what's amazing about that is now, if you drive them for many, many, many miles, you'll basically meet the break even point for carbon emissions, and they will eventually start to save. Now, this is the big, big, big picture everyone is talking about. This man just talked about how it looks like a Tesla van or a new SUV. Let me try to zoom in on this so we can actually look at what this product actually was. All right. So, zooming in, I mean, people were waiting for some huge announcement for Tesla, and all we got was just an animation of two cars with a plastic or a sheet over them or whatever. We don't actually know what the cars are going to be like or if they actually have these models yet. But we do have these graphics, and that actually tells us one good thing, that is Tesla is going to eventually release more EVs. They're going to be announcing them probably in the future, but like one of the other engineers said, it's going to be coming out for another day. I think that was actually one of the product designers. But anyways, going forward, we have more tweets that came out. Basically, there's gonna be a next generation of vehicles coming out. They're gonna be a lot more efficient with more space-time efficiency improvements. On top of that, there's gonna be more improved manufacturing facilities. Once again, very awesome for Tesla. On top of that, much more efficient uses for the Model 3s. They actually talked about the casting system and the new design processing that's going to be more efficient for the microprocessors. Once again, they're going to cost 50% less, and they're going to do a lot more with just one chip. So you're putting a lot more of these transistors, a lot of these processors in just one little chip. Once again, being a lot more efficient. On top of that, they did talk about other things such as powering houses, having services to do so, and their next drive unit, which is going to be a lot more scalable, right? So Elon Musk was talking about the fact that developing an EV that costs like $40,000 is possible, or even like 35,000. Yes, but then how do you mass produce it? How do you make it efficient when doing that? That is what Tesla is still working on. On top of that, they had a lot more updates when it comes to their motors and other pieces of technology. And they're basically in control of their designs and other things, which helps them basically outperform a lot of their competitors, because other companies out there are actually outsourcing from different countries and other companies. Tesla's actually very different. There are other things about the Tesla bot that came out, and Tesla Bolts, and also their power development. The cars are constantly learning. They mentioned that too. Full self-driving beta uh, developments as well, how they are relatively safe, believe it or not. They actually tend to be a lot more safe based off the rate in which accidents actually happen. So once again, very awesome. They were talking more about developing full self-driving beta, how the cars are constantly learning. We also saw some other cool things about how Tesla has an idea of a supercharger with a diner. Once again, very cool. So they want to actually improve the whole charging experience for customers. So this is a very good idea that was mentioned by one of their other employees. I consider that very, very awesome. It's going to improve the customer experience. And then finally, there was some talk about a possible charging mat. Not too sure about that though. That's not confirmed. But once again, it would be very cool. We also want to congratulate Tesla because they built their 4 millionth vehicle very, very recently. Once again, a huge journey. Very, very awesome. And finally, I'm going to just try to conclude this because this is once again just a lot of information. The last thing was the last most significant thing announced at the very end was Tesla has officially announced the Giga Mexico. So, yes, it's going to be in Monterrey. It's absolutely incredible, and it's going to build Tesla's next gen vehicle. So that's awesome news, right? That's awesome. But we already knew about this. I actually talked about this like yesterday, even the day before. I mean, we knew about this, so it was nothing new, nothing to surprise investors with. And once again, when Elon Musk was asked, "What's the plan for the Model 2 or etc.?" he didn't really say much. They're still working on it basically, and he just wanted to transition to the next question. Now, when it comes to the Tesla bot, there have been some improvements. We actually saw a video of it walking on 2 feet and actually grabbing things. So Elon Musk did mention there are updates being made, but that's about it. And after that, that's basically some of the main gist of what ended up happening. So, in my opinion, it was kind of anticlimactic. Basically, my friends and I were actually watching it together at some points, and we were just waiting for something big to be announced. Many people were talking about how we want Steve Jobs to return so the marketing could actually improve big time. But, anyways, for Tesla, I mean, I have to say that this is awesome. The whole presentation was technically awesome for longer term investors, people interested in engineering. But I just, once again, don't think that this was the best way to present what they have for the general public, for large investors, because you have to remember the retail investors are also technically large investors because it may not seem like that big if it's just like a person with a few thousand or a person with 10,000, but if you have millions and millions of people all over the world investing thousands and thousands each, that's going to bring in billions of dollars, and that does matter a lot. That can actually affect many different stocks. So it's still important for Tesla to appeal to larger audiences once again, and a lot of people are frustrated. Despite that, looking at the inventory levels, they did go up a little bit, not necessarily too crazy though, as the price cuts are still helping the company. As far as volume goes, let's see, the volume for today was up at 151 million. So Tesla did drop on lower volume, and it did get a red day as I did predict. I did predict the market would be red today. That's what ended up happening. Average volume was 196 million. Tesla came a little bit short on that. And finally, as far as the short volume goes, slight increase today, a slight increase. Once again, a little bit more shorting ended up happening. And then as far as data goes, right now the price pairs ratio is at this high. It's likely going to come down a little bit because once again, expectations were not met, and Tesla might actually see a bit of a pullback because of that. Now, many analysts are bullish. Tesla has been giving us very good earnings in the past. So when I talk about pullbacks or even Tesla dropping, that does not mean that it's fundamentally weak. It still is very strong, just as I mentioned before. Thursdays tend to be one of the worst days of the week for Tesla. We're only green 47% of the time historically. So once again, the odds are favoring more downside. And finally, I don't know if we have an update on the short interest. I didn't actually see a big spike here, and I find that kind of suspicious. Maybe a lot of shorts did not want to pile in. Maybe the data has to update for like yesterday. It hasn't updated yet. So maybe more shorts piled in. They knew something. Maybe they didn't. But once again, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that over the next couple of days. Now, in the after hours, at the time I'm recording this, Tesla's down over 5%. It's getting smacked right now. It just bounced off about 190, which is the next major level of support. Is that 190? I think that's 189. Wow, that's very interesting. So in my previous videos, I told you guys, all right, I first told you that if we actually, hide the extended hours, I told you all that Tesla had this gap that formed. Tesla could actually fill this gap today. I thought Tesla could come all the way down to like 196, then bounce and close somewhere around the low 200s, somewhat red. We did actually close somewhat red, but we haven't fully filled the gap. Now, additionally, Tesla is dropping pretty hard, and that's because of the fact that there was so much hype going into the event. Tesla started actually rallying as early as on Monday. And once again, expectations are not going to be met unless Tesla comes up with like some master idea. They announced something big tomorrow, which I'm not really seeing. This was their opportunity to do it, and they did leave a lot of short term investors kind of disappointed. So, once again, it is what it is, but we just have to carry on despite that. Now, I do have some good news for Tesla, though. I'm going to explain exactly why. For tomorrow, if you're bullish on Tesla, just remember this: we have resistance right now, since we're in the 190s. Resistance is going to be around 200 and 202, and then we also have about the 207 zone is going to be important. 209, that zone, followed by like 215. So we do have a lot of resistance above us. Support to watch for if Tesla does come down, a very important support zone is between 187 to 189, almost 190, like around that zone right there. That's going to be a very important. Tesla might try to bounce if it touches that. And then if that doesn't necessarily hold, like there could be a lot of selling tomorrow. The next important level is going to be around the 185 zone. So please be very careful because tomorrow we might see a lot of panic selling, lots of profit taking, and the market could even pull back a little bit more. But I did mention I have some good news, okay? So the odds are favoring tomorrow that Tesla's going to likely come down, maybe try to bounce a little bit off 190, just try a little bit. It's likely going to fail though, because there's going to be a lot of selling pressure, and it's likely going to come all the way down to the 180s. Maybe the high 180s, maybe a little bit lower. So just be prepared for the shocker. A lot of investors are just not happy right now with what Tesla just gave us. Uh, Once again, guys, I'm not too angry at Tesla about it. It was technically good for the long term. But going forward, for as a short term investor, if people were buying calls, it's not going to help them. There was actually a lot of call buying on Tesla as well. So a lot of people buying calls for Friday and tomorrow are likely going to be in for some pain. Now, for SPY, I want to note to everyone, we are actually on a nice downtrend, but we are forming. At least we were forming a potential bullish divergence right over here. This tells me that we're likely in a bottoming process. I think SPY, its bottom is likely going to be around 393, or it could come a little lower to this 390 to 388 zone. This is going to be a demand zone. I'm saying this because the odds are favoring maybe we come down a little more to this like 390 to 388 zone if 393 doesn't hold, but then we're likely going to see the market bounce and we're going to slowly just chop around, maybe uptrend a little bit as we get closer to CPI. Now, that does not mean I'm a mega bull. I just think the market is due for a bit of a bounce, just a slight one over the next few days. Not saying it has to start tomorrow, but a little bit later, maybe by Friday, maybe by next week. And then if the market gets the bounce, we're likely going to see more downside later after that bounce. And I'm saying that because of what we're seeing way up here with the Fed continuing to tighten, with many signs pointing in the direction that the economy was very strong for February, and the CPI numbers are once again going to be a little bit hot as consumer spending is still relatively high, and we're not seeing as much personal savings, right? As credit card usages just keep on increasing. So what is this telling me? Okay, the market might come down tomorrow a little bit more, all right, but we might be establishing a temporary bottom, all right. Maybe 393, maybe around like 390 or so, like around this demand zone if 393 doesn't hold. If it doesn't hold, then watch 390 to 388. If the market bounces, this could actually improve Tesla's performance later on, maybe for like Friday or maybe going into next week. Just a slight improvement, nothing too serious. And then we have to just be very careful. Do not turn into a mega bull because, like I said before, the sell signals came way up here, and the market's going to likely continue to see more downside for the medium term, right? After FOMC and etc. For the triple Q, it did almost exactly what I predicted. I told you all we'd probably fill this gap right here and come all the way down to the 290 zone, bounce around there a little bit, and actually close around the low 290s. That's exactly what happened. Now, for the triple Q, it could come down a little bit more, especially with Tesla tanking. So we could see this thing enter the 280 zone. I think 288 is a very important level. So we could actually see it come all the way down there. But it's likely going to try to establish a temporary bottom around there and maybe try to bounce either later at the end of this week or maybe going into next week, right? So I'm just trying to let everyone know that if you're trying to play puts for SPY and QQQ way down here, maybe you can make some money, but there's no guarantee it's going to last forever because I do think the market might try to get a temporary counter trend rally. And this is going to be a time where hedge funds start to reposition, they start shorting at the top, and they get ready, all right, for an even bigger drop to come later. And I do believe it's going to come soon. We just have to be very patient. It may take a couple of weeks. Now, for the VIX, The VIX came very close to my level, but we do have on the hourly this gap all the way down to the low 20s. We actually touched that. The VIX is trying to balance a little. It could try a little bit more, but to me, it looks like the VIX is going to start chopping a bit. It may even pull back just a little bit more because of the market potentially bouncing soon, right? That's completely normal, completely fine, because the bigger picture is we have a breakout on the VIX. Because the VIX broke out, that tells me that the market will have more downside for the medium term, for like April, most likely, for the second half of March. But before more downside comes, before the VIX continues to take off, it might come down a little bit more as the market does push up a bit, a little bit later, right? As I was talking about a potential bounce to come soon. For Apple, I'm just going to talk about a couple more things before I end it with Tesla. Apple could come down a little bit more to that 144 level, maybe a little lower. Very possible for Apple, but it could actually get a bit of a bounce very later. Once Apple bounces, it's going to try to fight for about this 150 zone. If it does break that, we could try to fill our gap. I think there's a gap around 152. We could try to do that, once again, helping the market bounce later on, not saying tomorrow, but later on by like Friday, maybe going into next week. The dollar is starting to show a little bit of weakness. On the daily, it was very bullish. It was pushing up very hard. It still is bullish longer term, but for the short term, it's starting to actually curl a bit. What this means is the dollar is actually weakening its momentum, and the dollar could pull back just a little bit more, come down to this 104 zone, maybe even the 103s. Completely fine. That's nothing to be worried about. What the dollar is telling me is the market might form a bottom, the S&P 500, the QQQ, and they might temporarily rally a bit, right? Later on, maybe by like next week, temporarily, right? The dollar might come down temporarily as the market rallies, and then the dollar is going to balance and continue with the uptrend because once again, the breakout still happened. Once the dollar like continues with the breakout, maybe by this, maybe the end of the first week or second week of March or something like that, then the market's going to start tanking again. All right, I hope that's clear. I'm seeing a temporary bounce soon to come to the markets over the next couple of trading days. Then later on, more downside later by like mid to late March, going into like April, major downside. I'm seeing a big drop coming soon. Now, finally, the last thing is the 10-year Treasury yield. This thing once again hit 40. That was my target. I told you it's probably going to hit 40, but now it's getting some weakening momentum up here. This means that the market is likely starting to trade a little bit more sideways, and the market once again could form a bottom soon, a temporary bottom over the next couple of days before we do see a bounce later on. Now, I'm letting you all know this in advance. It's very important that I like remind you guys of this because for Tesla, yes, Tesla's likely going to come down. It's likely going to drop to like the 190 zone, could drop even lower. All right, there's going to be a lot of selling probably tomorrow. And despite that, later on, I do think Tesla has potential to actually rebound a bit and might try to rebound a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily say this event was horrible. It just did not necessarily hype us up or live up to the hype, but it could rebound a little bit later, maybe going into next week with the market, at least to some degree. So I don't expect it to crash all the way straight down to like 140 instantly. I doubt it's going to happen like that. It's likely going to come all the way down to the 190, if not the 180s, then try to bounce a little first before we do see more downside later on. That's what I'm essentially seeing on Tesla. But once again, we're forming a topping process right over here. So I don't expect Tesla to just break this high very soon. It may take a while for it to do that. And for the short term, specifically tomorrow, maybe even for Friday, I'm seeing downside for Tesla. We're likely going to gap down, come down, try to balance a little bit, but we're most likely going to see a bit of panic, people being frustrated, and a lot more selling pressure. So watch the levels I showed you guys yesterday and get ready. It is very unfortunate for the people that bought calls, but I warned everyone in my previous videos. I was telling you, be prepared, be ready. In case Tesla does not end up announcing the new models or more details about them, be prepared for potential downside. And if you're watching this channel, you would have been prepared for that, hopefully. So anyways, thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely incredible rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.